Minho stood at the center of the Great Hall on Nexus Prime. The massive dome stretched high above him, filled with delegates from across the galaxy. Thousands of eyes watched him from floating platforms. Some eyes were large and black, like the Nethys. Others glowed blue like the Velkari. The Keth had no eyes at all, just smooth metal faces that somehow still seemed to stare. He had given this same speech in his mind 100 times. Today was the day humans would finally say goodbye to the Galactic Council. 300 years of service were coming to an end. Honored delegates, Minho began. His voice echoed in the vast space. I stand before you today to deliver humanity's final message to this council. A ripple of movement went through the crowd. Some delegates leaned forward. Others seemed to relax in their seats. The Velkari ambassador, Zeth Mara, actually smiled. It was not a kind smile. For 3 centuries, humans have served this galaxy, Minho continued. We have mined your asteroids in the cold dark of space. We have explored worlds too dangerous for others. We have fought wars that other species called too costly to fight. The Keth collective spoke as one voice, a sound like metal grinding against metal. The humans complain about work they volunteered to do. Minho did not let anger show on his face. We did not volunteer. We were assigned these tasks because you saw us as expendable. When the Helix Nebula needed to be cleared of radiation, you sent humans. When the Void Miners needed someone to go into unstable space, you sent humans. When the Shadow Wars broke out on the Rim worlds, you sent human soldiers. And you were paid well for this work, said the Nethys elder called Marasthan. Her voice was like wind through old trees. Humans received food, shelter, and protection. We received what you gave to your pets, Minho replied. Never a voice in decisions, never a vote on laws that affected our people, never respect as equals. He pulled out a small device and placed it on the speaking platform. Immediately, holographic Siop images filled the air above him. They showed human miners working in the asteroid fields near Kepler Station. The miners wore heavy suits and carried massive drilling equipment. In the background, strange shapes moved between the rocks. You see us as simple workers, Minho said. But look closer at what we actually do. The image changed. Now it showed human soldiers on a planet called Whisper Rock. They were fighting something that the cameras could barely capture. Dark shapes that seemed to eat light itself. The soldiers used weapons that glowed with strange energy. The Devourers, whispered someone in the crowd. Yes, Minho said. The things you pretend do not exist. The things your scientists say are impossible. Humans have been fighting them for you, dying for you, keeping them away from your safe worlds. The hall grew quiet. Even the Keth collective stopped their constant humming. Every asteroid field we mine, we clear of threats you cannot see. Every dangerous world we explore, we make safe from horrors you refuse to believe in. Every war we fight, we battle enemies that exist beyond your understanding. Zeth Mara stood, up on her platform. The humans speak of fairy tales. There are no monsters in space, only the dangers of radiation and gravity and empty air. Minho looked directly at her. Tell that to the survivors of Crimson 7. Oh wait, you cannot. There are no survivors. The entire Velkari research station vanished 3 years ago. What do you think happened to them? Equipment failure, Zeth Mara said quickly. Poor maintenance. The rescue team found claw marks on the inside of the station walls, Minho replied. Claw marks too big to come from any known creature, but the humans who arrived first, they knew what made those marks. They had seen them before. The image changed again. This time, it showed Earth. The blue and green planet hung in space like a jewel. Ships surrounded it. Thousands of them. Human ships of every size and shape. Today we go home, Minho announced. Every human worker, every human soldier, every human family living on alien worlds. We return to Earth and to the colonies we built, with our own hands. Good, Zeth Mara said loudly. The galaxy will be cleaner without human interference. The galaxy will be what it chooses to be, Minho replied. Without us. He touched the device again. The images disappeared. We leave behind our equipment. We leave behind our buildings. We take only what belongs to us, our ships, our people, and our knowledge. Knowledge? Mirastan asked. What knowledge do humans possess that could matter? To elder species? Minho smiled for the first time since entering the hall. It was not a happy smile. Knowledge of what lurks in the dark places, knowledge of how to fight things that should not exist, knowledge of why the last galactic civilization fell 10 million years ago. The hall erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions in a dozen languages. The Keth collective buzzed like angry insects. But Minho was already walking toward the exit. As he reached the doors, he turned back one last time. You have 3 months to prepare. After that, you are on your own. The doors closed behind him with a soft hiss. Outside the hall, Captain Jiwan waited for him. She commanded the human fleet that had brought the final delegates to Nexus Prime. Her dark eyes showed no emotion, but Minho knew her well enough to see the relief there. How did they take it? She asked. About as expected, Minho replied. They think we are making empty threats. Maybe they are right, Jiwan said, as they walked toward the docking bay. Maybe the galaxy will be fine without us. Minho stopped walking. He looked out through a massive window at the space around Nexus Prime. Ships from 100 worlds moved in careful patterns. Trade vessels, exploration ships, pleasure crafts carrying tourists. It all looked so peaceful and organized. Do you really believe that? He asked. Jiwan followed his gaze. No, she said quietly. I have seen what happens when humans are not watching. I have seen the reports from the deep space monitors. Things are already stirring. They reached the docking bay where the human transport waited. The ship was not beautiful like Velkari vessels, or elegant like Nethys craft. It was built for function, not form. But it was strong and reliable, like everything humans made. As they boarded, Minho's communication device buzzed. A message from Earth, from President Seung herself. He read it quickly, then showed it to Jiwon. The evacuation begins tomorrow, he said. Every human settlement, every outpost, every research station. We bring our people home. All of them? Jiwon asked. All except the volunteers, Minho replied. The ones who choose to stay and observe, the ones who will send us reports about what happens next. The ship lifted off from Nexus Prime's docking bay. Through the viewports, they could see the great space station growing smaller. Soon it was just another point of light among the stars. Do you think they will call for help? Jiwon asked. Eventually, Minho said, when they realize what we were really doing for them. When they understand what we were keeping at bay. And will we answer? Minho was quiet for a long time. He thought about the human miners who had died fighting things that official records said did not exist. He thought about the human soldiers who had given their lives to protect alien worlds that did not even know they were in danger. We will see, he said finally. We will see if they have learned to ask nicely. The ship jumped into hyperspace, carrying them toward Earth. Behind them, the galaxy continued its ancient dance of trade and politics and careful civilization. But in the dark spaces between the stars, other things began to move. Things that had been held in check for 300 years. Things that were now free to hunt. 6 months had passed since the last human transport left Nexus Prime. The galaxy had settled into what the Velkari called proper order. Trade routes ran smoothly without human interference. Mining operations followed careful schedules without human chaos. Even the Keth collective hummed with satisfaction at the new harmony. Zethmara stood in the control room of mining station Kappa 7, watching the automated systems work. The station floated in the asteroid belt of the Crimson System, harvesting rare metals from the floating rocks. Everything was perfect. Clean. Efficient. Production is up 12% since the humans left, reported her assistant, a young Velkari named Hentak. The automated miners work much faster than human crews. Of course they do, Zethmara replied. Machines do not waste time with human emotions or human fears. She walked to the main viewing window. Outside, dozens of mining drones moved between the asteroids like metal insects. Their cutting beams lit up the darkness as they carved chunks of valuable ore from the ancient rocks. No human workers floated out there in clumsy suits. No human voices cluttered the communication channels with unnecessary chatter. Alert, the station's computer announced. Drone 7 Alpha has stopped responding. Zethmara frowned. Show me the drone's position. A holographic display appeared in the air. It showed the location of all active drones as blue dots. Drone 7 Alpha appeared as a red dot near a large asteroid. Send a recovery team, she ordered. Recovery drones are already moving, Hentak reported. They should reach 7 Alpha in 10 minutes. Zethmara watched the display as 2 recovery drones approached the missing unit. The red dot remained still, no movement, no response to signals. Recovery Team Alpha has reached the target. The rule, computer announced. Transmitting visual data. The main screen flickered and showed what the recovery drones could see. Asteroid 779 floated in space, a dark gray rock the size of a city block. The missing drone should have been near its surface, cutting into the mineral-rich stone. Instead, they found pieces. What happened to it? Hentak whispered. The drone had been torn apart, not cut or melted by some accident. Torn. Metal pieces floated around the asteroid like metallic snow. The cutting beam array had been ripped away from the main body. The ore collection tanks were crushed flat. Equipment failure, Zethmara said firmly. Poor maintenance protocols. But even as she spoke, something else appeared on the screen. Something moved inside the asteroid itself. The rock face cracked, and long crystalline shapes pushed through. They looked like claws made of dark glass. Alert, the computer announced again. Multiple drone failures in Sector 12. The holographic display updated. Now 3 more drones showed as red dots. Then 5, then 8. Get me a connection to the Galactic Mining Authority, Zethmara ordered. This is clearly a system malfunction. While Hentak worked at the communication station, Zethmara stared at the screen. The recovery drones had moved closer to investigate the destroyed mining unit. But as they approached, the crystalline shapes inside the asteroid began to glow. A soft light that seemed to pull at the eyes. Ma'am, Hentak called. I cannot reach the mining authority. All communication channels are jammed with emergency signals. Emergency signals? Mining stations across the sector are reporting equipment failures. Dozens of them. The screen flickered again. Now it showed a wider view of the asteroid field. Dark shapes moved between the rocks. Not ships, not drones. Something else entirely. They flowed like liquid shadow but left crystal formations wherever they touched. Dr. Yuna watched the same events unfold from her hidden observation post 3 systems away. She was officially dead, killed in a mining accident 2 months ago, according to the records. In reality, she had volunteered to stay behind when the humans withdrew. Someone needed to document what would happen next. Her small ship hung in the shadow of a dead moon, all systems running silent. Long-range sensors tracked events across the local galactic sector. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. Day 1. 183, she spoke into her recorder. The Devourers have emerged from dormancy in 7 star systems. Estimated population growth rate suggests they have been reproducing unchecked since human mining operations ceased. She switched her display to show mining station Kappa 7. The station was still transmitting, but the signals were getting weaker. Through her telescopes, she could see crystal formations growing on the station's hull. The Velkari do not understand what they are facing, she continued. They think this is equipment failure. They do not realize that human miners were not just extracting ore, they were also destroying devourer eggs before they could hatch. Her communication system buzzed with an incoming message. Emergency transmission from the Keth Collective. She opened the channel and listened to their electronic voices speaking in unison. All border colonies have gone silent, the Keth announced. 17 worlds no longer respond to communication attempts. Investigation fleets are being prepared. Yuna switched her sensors to the Keth border region. Where once dozens of green dots had marked thriving colonies, now only empty space remained. No, not empty. Something was there, but her sensors could barely detect it. Clouds of dark matter that seemed to eat light itself. The shadow plague, she whispered. Moving faster than predicted. She began typing rapidly, sending encrypted messages to Earth through hidden relay stations. The information would take weeks to reach human space, but it had to be sent. Humanity needed to know how quickly things were falling apart. On the bridge of the Velkari warship Bright Talon, Admiral Korvash studied the reports flowing in from across the Empire. Mining stations going dark, colony worlds losing contact. Trade ships disappearing without distress calls. Pirates, he declared to his staff. Some new criminal organization is taking advantage of human absence to raid our territory. Sir, said his intelligence officer, a nervous Velkari named Tenlok. The pattern does not match pirate activity. Pirates take cargo and leave wreckage. These ships and stations simply vanish. Then it is a new weapon, Corvash insisted. Some rival power-testing stealth technology. He activated the main display, showing Velkari territory across a dozen star systems. Red marks indicated sites of recent disappearances. The pattern formed a rough circle, expanding outward from the old human mining areas. Deploy the Fifth Fleet to investigate Sector Gamma, he ordered, and send a message to the Nethys Council. Ask if their long-range sensors have detected anything unusual. What Admiral Corvash did not know was that the Nethys were dealing with their own crisis. On the ancient world of Nethys Prime, Elder Mirasthen stood in the Chamber of Eternal Wisdom, staring at readings that made no sense. The quantum barriers are failing, reported her assistant Valindra. Reality distortions are appearing across our monitoring network. Mirasthen had lived for over 2,000 years. She had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. She had witnessed cosmic events that younger species could not imagine. But the data scrolling across her screens frightened her in a way she had not felt since childhood. These readings, she said slowly, they match the ancient warnings, the stories our eldest survivors tell about the time of ending. Surely not, Valindra protested. Those are myths, stories to frighten children. Are they? Mirasthen pulled up archived data from deep in the Nethys historical records. Look at these patterns. The same quantum signatures. The same reality, distortions, the same expansion rate. The comparison data appeared side by side, ancient records from 10 million years ago and current sensor readings. They were nearly identical. The Void Shepherds, Mirasthen whispered. They have awakened. What? Are Void Shepherds? Creatures that exist between dimensions, Mirasthen explained. They feed on organized matter and energy. When they last emerged, they consumed 90% of all life in the galaxy. How were they stopped before? Mirasthen was quiet for a long moment. According to the records, they were not stopped. They simply went dormant after consuming everything they could reach. But the records also mention guardians, a warrior species that fought them in the deep places where normal life could not survive. What happened to these guardians? Unknown. They vanished after the crisis ended. Some theories suggest they evolved into something else, something that could blend into normal galactic civilization while still watching for signs of the ancient threat. Valindra stared at the elder. You think the humans... I think we have made a terrible mistake, Mirasthen said. Back on mining station Kappa 7, Zethmara watched her perfect automated operation fall apart. Half the drones were destroyed. Crystal formations covered 3 entire asteroids. Worst of all, the formations were growing. Evacuate the station, she finally ordered. Ma'am? Hentak looked shocked. Abandon our position? Something is wrong here. Something beyond equipment failure. As if in response to her words, the main screen lit up with warnings. A massive crystalline structure had emerged from the largest asteroid in the field. It pulsed with alien energy and reached toward the station with fractal arms. Emergency evacuation, Zethmara shouted. All personnel to escape pods. The station shook as something struck the hull. Through the viewing windows, crystal growths spread across the metal surface like infection. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened on Nexus Prime 3 weeks after the first mining stations went dark. Delegates arrived in ships that bristled with weapons and moved in tight formation. Fear had replaced the calm confidence that had marked their previous meetings. Elder Mirasthen of the Nethys spoke first, her ancient voice carrying across the Great Hall. 17 star systems have gone completely silent. 23 mining. Operations have been abandoned. Colony worlds housing over 2 billion beings no longer respond to any communication. Admiral Corvash of the Velkari stood to address the assembly. His uniform was no longer pristine. His ship had barely escaped the destruction of mining station Kappa 7, and crystal burns marked his face where alien energy had touched him. We have confirmed hostile contact, he announced. Unknown entities are attacking our infrastructure. Across multiple sectors, our weapons appear to have limited effect against these creatures. The Keth collective spoke as one voice, their electronic tones filled with something that might have been panic. The border colonies of the collective have been consumed. Organic and synthetic life forms alike have been absorbed into expanding crystal matrices. We calculate total galactic consumption within 6 standard months at current expansion rates. Zethmara activated the main display. Images filled the air above the delegates, showing the aftermath of the attacks. Worlds covered in dark crystal, formations. Space stations twisted into impossible geometric shapes. Ships found drifting empty, their hulls transformed into something that was neither metal nor organic. "These are not pirates or rebels," she said. "These are not natural phenomena. We are facing something that exists outside our understanding of physics and biology." "Impossible," declared Hentak, a younger Velkari who had not yet seen the front lines. "There must be a scientific explanation. Unknown radiation, perhaps, or some form of viral contamination." Elder Mirasthan stood slowly. Her great age seemed to weigh on her shoulders. "There is an explanation, but it is one we refuse to hear." Activated her own display, showing ancient Nethys records. Text scrolled past in languages so old that translation software struggled to interpret them. 10 million years ago, our ancestors faced this same threat. They called it the time of ending, creatures from beyond normal space that consumed entire civilizations. The records speak of guardians who fought them in the deep places where ordinary life could not survive. "Ancient mythology," Hentak protested. "Stories told by primitive cultures." "The quantum signatures match," Mirasthan replied. "The expansion patterns are identical. The effects on matter and energy are exactly what the oldest records describe." She paused, looking around the hall at the faces of delegates from across the galaxy. The records also mention that the Guardians eventually evolved. They learned to blend into normal galactic civilization while maintaining their ability to fight the ancient threats. Understanding dawned slowly across the assembly. The Keth collective began humming with electronic distress. Admiral Korvash sat down heavily in his seat. "The humans?" Zethmara whispered. Commander Hayok floated in the command center of the Earth. Observation ship Silent Watch, 3 light-years from the nearest Galactic Council territory. His ship was one of dozens that humanity had positioned around the galaxy's edge, watching and waiting. "Report, Lieutenant Yuna," he said to the scientist who had volunteered to stay behind. Yuna's face appeared on the main screen, transmitted from her hidden position deep in former Velkari space. "The Devourers have consumed the entire Kepler sector. The Shadow Plague has spread to 14 Keth colonies. The Void Shepherds have manifested in normal space near 3 Nethys worlds." "All at once?" Hayok asked. "No, sir. In sequence. The Devourers emerged first when human mining operations ceased. The Shadow Plague followed when human deep space patrols ended. The Void Shepherds appeared when human reality anchors were shut down." Hayok studied the tactical display showing the spread of the various threats. Each type of entity had emerged in areas where humans had previously maintained a specific type of operation. It was not coincidence. "How long until they reach critical mass?" he asked. "At current expansion rates, the 3 primary threats will merge in approximately 4 months, Yuna replied. "After that, they will begin consuming each other and evolving into something worse." "The Nightmare Swarm," Hayok said. Quietly, "Yes, sir. The final form. The thing that ended the last galactic civilization." Hayok closed the communication channel and turned to his navigation officer. "Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 2 monitoring. I want every sensor focused on the convergence zone." "Sir?" his communications officer called out. "We are receiving transmissions from Nexus Prime, multiple priority channels. They are requesting immediate human assistance." "Are they now?" Hayok smiled grimly. "After 6 months of silence, they remember we exist." "Should I respond, sir?" "Not yet. Transfer all their messages to Earth Command. Let President Taehyun decide how to handle their requests." On Earth, President Taehyun sat in the deep bunkers beneath Geneva, studying reports from across the galaxy. The human evacuation had been completed ahead of schedule. Every human civilian was now safely within Earth's defensive perimeter or in the protected colonies of the Sol system, but humanity was not hiding. In the months since their withdrawal from galactic affairs, human industry had shifted into what the military called war mode. Shipyards that once built mining vessels now produced warships unlike anything in the galaxy. Factories that once made civilian equipment now manufactured weapons designed for fighting enemies that existed partially outside normal reality. The Galactic Council has sent 17 separate requests for assistance, reported General Minsu, head of the Human Defense Forces. They are offering full membership, territorial concessions, and complete access to their technology databases. What do our observers report about the alien response to the threats? Taehyun asked. Total failure, Minsu replied bluntly. Velkari energy weapons pass harmlessly through void shepherds. Nethys quantum manipulators cannot affect devourer crystals. Keth collective consciousness is being corrupted by shadow plague exposure. Dr. Garam, Earth's leading expert on galactic archaeology, activated a holographic display. The pattern matches historical records perfectly. Every 20 to 30 million years, these entities emerge and consume advanced civilizations. But they always leave primitive life alone. Why? Taehyun asked. Because primitive life does not generate the organized energy patterns they feed on. Space flight, quantum communication, matter transportation, all of these create the signatures that attract them. But humanity developed the same technologies. Yes, but we developed them differently, Garam explained. Human technology evolved in a universe already touched by these entities. Our ancestors encountered the remnants of the last extinction event. Human mythology is full of monsters and nightmares because we evolved to fight them. She changed the display to show human brain patterns compared to other species. Human neural structure includes what we call threat recognition centers that other species lack. We can perceive dangers that exist outside normal space-time. We instinctively develop countermeasures for things that should not exist. So when human miners killed devourers in asteroid fields, they were following instincts encoded in their DNA, Garam confirmed. When human soldiers fought shadow plague outbreaks, they were using tactics that evolved specifically for that purpose. When human engineers built reality anchors to stabilize space around colonies, they were responding to genetic memories of previous invasions. Taehyun stood and walked to the main viewing screen. Earth hung before them, blue and green and beautiful. Ships moved in careful patterns around the planet. But these were not the simple cargo vessels of the past. These were warships built for fighting nightmares. The aliens want our help, he said, but they do not understand what they are asking for. Sir, Minsu asked, they think we are just another species with better weapons. They do not realize that helping them means revealing what humanity really is. He turned back to his advisors. When we fight these entities, we will have to use methods that will terrify our former colleagues. Weapons that should not exist, tactics that violate every principle of civilized warfare. We will have to become the monsters that hunt monsters. The aliens may fear us more than they fear the entities, Garam warned. Perhaps, Taehyun agreed. But fear can be useful. Respect born of terror lasts longer than respect born of gratitude. He activated the communication system. Signal all observation ships. Begin Phase 3. It is time to show the galaxy what humans really are. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council waited in growing desperation. Their fleets had suffered devastating losses attempting to fight enemies they could barely comprehend. Their scientists had no answers for threats that operated outside known physics. Elder Mirasthen stood before the empty platform where the human ambassador had once spoken. We cast them out, she said to the assembled delegates. We told them they were unnecessary. We celebrated when they left. They will return, Admiral Korvash said, but his voice lacked confidence. They must return. They are part of this galaxy, too. The delegation from Nexus Prime approached Earth in ships that had once been symbols of power and pride. Now the Velkari vessels showed scorch marks from crystal weapons. The Nethys craft flickered in and out of normal space, their quantum drives damaged by reality distortions. The Keth collective ship moved slowly, its hull partly transformed into something that was no longer entirely metal. Senator Jihyo stood on the observation deck of Earth Station Alpha, watching the alien ship's request permission to dock. 2 months. had passed since the last communication from the Galactic Council. 2 months of silence while the galaxy burned. "They look desperate," commented Captain Wanho, who commanded the station's security forces. "They should be," Jihyo replied. "According to our observers, they have lost over half their territory. Entire species have gone extinct." The docking bay filled with aliens who had never expected to stand on human structures as supplicants. Elder Mirasthan moved slowly, her ancient body showing the stress of recent events. Admiral Korvash wore the uniform of a fleet that no longer existed. The Keth delegation consisted of 3 units, whose collective consciousness had been partially severed by shadow plague corruption. President Taehyun entered the meeting chamber flanked by human military officers. Unlike previous diplomatic encounters, the humans now wore uniforms that seemed to absorb light. Their equipment included devices that made the air itself feel heavy with potential energy. Mirasthan spoke first, her voice carrying the weight of 2,000 years. "President Taehyun, we come before you in desperation. Our civilizations are dying. Our peoples are being consumed by forces we cannot comprehend or combat." "You comprehend them well enough," Taehyun replied calmly. "You simply refuse to believe the evidence before your eyes." Admiral Korvash stepped forward. "We were wrong to dismiss human warnings. We were wrong to treat your people as expendable. We offer full restitution, complete citizenship for all humans, seats on the High Council, territorial grants, access to our most advanced technologies." "Technologies that cannot harm our enemies," Taehyun observed. "What use are Velkari energy weapons against creatures that exist partially outside normal space? What good are Nethys quantum manipulators against entities that feed on organized reality?" The Keth collective spoke in unison, their voices showing strain from their damaged consciousness. "We offer merger, full integration of human neural patterns into the collective, immortality through distributed consciousness." "You offer to assimilate us into a hive mind that is being corrupted by the shadow plague," Taehyun said. "In exchange for fighting enemies that you invited through your own negligence." Mirasthan raised one trembling hand. "You knew this would happen. Your people knew what we were awakening when we stopped your mining operations. Why did you not warn us more clearly?" "We tried," Taehyun replied. "Ambassador Minho told you directly about the threats we were containing. You called them fairy tales because they were impossible according to our science." "Your science is incomplete," said Dr. Garam, stepping out from behind the human delegation. "You study a universe that has been sanitized by human presence for 3 centuries. You have no experience with the true dangers that exist in the deep places." She activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Red zones marked areas consumed by the various entities. The red was spreading faster now as the different types of creatures began to merge and evolve. "The Devourers, Shadow Plague, and Void Shepherds have reached critical mass," she explained. "In approximately 6 weeks, they will complete their convergence. When that happens, they will transform into the Nightmare Swarm." "What is the Nightmare Swarm?" Korvash asked. "The final form," Garam replied. "A hybrid entity that combines the consumption abilities of Devourers, the reality-warping power of Void Shepherds, and the infectious nature of the Shadow Plague. It is what ended the last galactic civilization 10 million years ago." The alien delegates exchanged glances of growing horror. "How do we stop it?" Mirasthan whispered. "You do not," Taehyun said. "You cannot. Your species lack the necessary neural architecture to perceive these entities clearly, much less fight them effectively. But humans can?" "Humans evolved specifically for this purpose," Dr. Garam explained. "We are the descendants of the guardian species mentioned in your oldest records, the ones who fought the Nightmare Swarm during the last extinction event." She changed the display to show human genetic patterns. "What you call human aggression is actually specialized threat response programming. What you call human recklessness is the ability to function in environments that would drive other species insane. What you call human stubbornness is resistance to reality distortion effects." "Then you will help us?" Korvash asked hopefully. Taehyun was silent for a long moment. He looked at each of the alien delegates in turn. "Humanity will act. but not as your subordinates, not as your hired soldiers, not as partners who will be discarded when the crisis ends. What are your terms? Mirasthan asked. Complete autonomy in all operations related to the containment and elimination of extra-dimensional threats. No interference from alien governments. In human military actions, no questions about human methods or weapons. Agreed, the delegates said almost in unison. Recognition that humanity is not just another galactic species, but the designated guardians of this reality. Our role is not to serve your civilizations, but to protect the galaxy from threats you cannot perceive. The aliens hesitated. This was more than they had expected to concede. The alternative, Taehyun continued, is extinction within 2 months. Your choice. Mirasthan spoke for all of them. We accept your terms. Taehyun nodded to General Minsu, who activated his communication device. Signal the fleet. Begin Phase 4 deployment. The meeting chamber's windows dimmed automatically as intense light filled the space around Earth. Ships began emerging from hidden positions throughout the Sol system. Not the simple cargo vessels and escort craft that aliens had seen before, but warships that hurt to look at directly. The vessels were wrong in fundamental ways. Their hulls seemed to bend light around themselves. Their weapon arrays included devices that made reality itself feel unstable. Energy patterns played across their surfaces in colors that had no names in any galactic language. What are those? Corvash whispered. Nightmare hunters, Captain Wanho replied. Ships designed specifically for fighting enemies that exist outside normal space-time. The largest vessel moved past the viewing window, its massive bulk blocking out the stars. Strange symbols covered its hull, marks that seemed to shift and change when observed directly. Weapon ports opened and closed like breathing organisms. The human fleet, Taehyun announced, consists of 237 vessels designed for extra-dimensional warfare. Each ship carries weapons that operate on principles your scientists would call impossible. Each crew has been trained to fight enemies that should not exist. How long have you been preparing for this? Mirasthan asked. Since the day we withdrew from the Galactic Council, Taehyun replied. We knew this moment would come. We knew that sooner or later you would need us to be what we really are. And what are you really? Taehyun smiled, and for a moment, the alien delegate saw something in his expression that made them step backward. Something predatory. Something that hunted in the dark spaces between stars. We are the reason nightmares fear the dark, he said. The alien ships that had brought the delegation to Earth were now dwarfed by the human fleet forming around them. Vessels that had once seemed mighty looked like toys next to the nightmare. Hunters. Energy readings from the human ships registered at levels that should have been impossible to contain. Your fleets are retreating to defensive positions around your core worlds, General Minsu reported. Our observers indicate that all 3 primary threats are now moving toward the convergence point in the former Kepler sector. The birth of the Nightmare Swarm, Dr. Garam added. If they successfully merge, the resulting entity will be capable of consuming the entire galaxy within months. What can we do to help? Admiral Corvash asked. Stay out of our way, Taehyun replied bluntly. Your presence in the combat zone would be a liability. Your ships cannot survive exposure to the entities we will be fighting. Your crews would be driven insane by what they see. Then we are truly helpless? You are what you have always been, Taehyun said. Civilizations that exist because something else chooses to protect you. The only difference is that now you know it. The human fleet began moving, ships disappearing into hyperspace jumps that left reality scarred in their wake. Each departure created distortions that registered on alien sensors as impossible energy signatures. Elder Mirasthan watched the last of the human ships vanish into the dark. What have we done? She asked quietly. What was necessary, Taehyun replied. What should have been done long ago. He turned to leave the meeting chamber, then paused. I suggest you use the time we buy you wisely. Learn what it means to live in a galaxy where humanity no longer hides what it is. The alien delegates stood alone in the chamber, surrounded by the vast emptiness of space. In the distance, stars continued their ancient dance. But now they knew that between those stars, humanity hunted things that should not exist. Admiral Sun Wu stood on the bridge of the human flagship Voidbreaker as it approached the convergence zone. Around him, reality itself seemed unstable. Stars flickered in and out of existence. Space folded into impossible geometries. His crew worked calmly at stations that monitored energies that had no names in any scientific database. "Contact in 30 minutes, reported his navigation officer, Lieutenant Bora. "All 3 primary threats have reached the merge point." Through the main viewport, they could see the epicenter of the galactic crisis. What had once been the Kepler sector was now a wound in space itself. Crystal formations the size of planets drifted through clouds of dark matter that seemed to absorb light. Reality storms crackled between dimensions as different types of entities prepared to become something worse. "Fleet status?" Sun Wu asked. 237 ships in formation, replied Captain Minseo from the tactical station. All reality anchors are active. All crews have taken their enhancement drugs. The enhancement drugs were necessary for fighting this type of enemy. Without them, human minds would be overwhelmed by the sensory input of extra-dimensional combat. Even with the drugs, many crew members would need psychological rehabilitation after the battle. "Signal from the observation ships," announced communications. Officer Hyunjin. "Dr. Yuna reports that the convergence has begun." On the main screen, they watched the birth of the nightmare swarm. Devourer crystals merged with shadow-plagued clouds, while void shepherds phased in and out of normal space. Where they touched, something new emerged. Something that was part mineral, part energy, part living darkness. "My God," whispered someone on the bridge. "There is no God here," Sun Wu replied calmly. "Only us." He activated the fleet-wide communication system. "All ships, this is Admiral Sun Wu. We are humanity's last line of defense against an enemy that destroyed the previous galactic civilization. If we fail here, everything we know will be consumed within months." The nightmare swarm was taking shape now, a massive entity that existed across multiple dimensions simultaneously. It pulsed with alien hunger, reaching toward the nearest star systems with tendrils that could span light years. "Remember your training," Sun Wu continued. "Remember what you are fighting for. Remember that this is what humans were born to do." Bai closed the communication channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Commander Jiho, bring all primary systems online." "Quantum disruptors charging," Jiho reported. "Reality bombs armed, nightmare torpedoes loaded." These were weapons that should not exist, built using principles that violated every known law of physics. They operated by breaking the fundamental rules that held reality together, creating localized zones where the impossible became possible. "All ships report ready," Captain Minseo announced. "Begin attack pattern Omega," Sun Wu ordered. "Show them what happens when humans stop being polite." The human fleet opened fire with weapons that made space itself scream. Quantum disruptors tore holes in the fabric of reality. Reality bombs created pockets of impossibility that even the nightmare swarm found difficult to navigate. Nightmare torpedoes sought out the entity's consciousness centers and attacked them directly. The nightmare swarm responded with fury that shook entire star systems. It lashed out with reality-warping attacks that would have destroyed any other fleet instantly, but human ships were built to survive the impossible. Their hulls incorporated materials that existed only in theoretical physics. Their shields operated on principles that alien scientists would declare insane. "Damage report," Sun Wu called as the ship shook under reality distortion effects. "Minor hull stress on decks 7 through 12, reported engineer Hyunwoo. "All systems still functional. The entity's attacks are powerful but predictable." Of course they were predictable. Humans had been fighting these things for millions of years. Every instinct, every tactical response, every technological development had been shaped by this ancient war. The battle raged across multiple dimensions. In normal space, it looked like ships firing strange weapons at clouds of crystalline darkness. But in the deeper dimensions where the nightmare swarm truly existed, it was a struggle between order and chaos, between sanity and madness, between life and the hunger that consumed all things. "Entity is adapting to our attack patterns," warned Lieutenant Bora, "initiating new defensive configurations." "Expected," Sun Wu replied. "Begin Phase 2. Release the inheritors." From the bellies of the human ships, smaller craft emerged. These were not ships in any conventional sense. They were part machine, part organism, part something else entirely. The crews that piloted them were no longer entirely human, transformed by processes that alien medical science could not comprehend. The inheritors dove into the heart of the nightmare swarm, fighting it from within. Where they passed, the entity's structure began to break down. Its hybrid nature, which made it so powerful, also made it vulnerable to weapons designed specifically for its destruction. Direct neural contact established, reported psychic warfare specialist Yunju. Beginning consciousness assault. This was the part of the battle that no alien species could witness and remain sane. Human psychics reached into the nightmare swarm's distributed intelligence and attacked it with thoughts and concepts that existed outside normal reality. They fought madness with controlled insanity, chaos with directed chaos. The entity screamed across dimensions. Its death cry could be heard on planets hundreds of light years away, driving sensitive species temporarily insane. But humans heard it only as the sound of another enemy dying. Entity integrity dropping below critical thresholds, announced Tactical Officer Minjae. Beginning final phase, Admiral Sunwoo activated his personal weapon, a device that he had hoped never to use. It reached into his own mind, into the genetic memories of humanity's ancient war, and channeled that knowledge into a form the nightmare swarm could not resist. He became, for a brief moment, what humanity truly was: a guardian, a hunter of nightmares. A species evolved specifically to stand between order and the hungry dark. The nightmare swarm collapsed inward, its hybrid structure unable to maintain coherence against the full weight of human purpose. Where it had existed, only empty space remained. Clean space, safe space. All enemy contacts eliminated, reported Captain Minseo. Sector secured. Casualties, Sunwoo asked. 17 ships lost. 43 crew members requiring psychological rehabilitation. No permanent losses. It was a victory, but not without cost. Fighting nightmares always left scars. 2 weeks later, Dr. Nari stood before the reformed Galactic Council in what had once been the Great Hall on Nexus Prime. The chamber had been redesigned to accommodate humanity's new role. The human delegation no longer sat in the observer section. They occupied the central platform, with other species arranged in concentric circles around them. The immediate threat has been eliminated, she announced. However, the galaxy has changed. The emergence of the nightmare swarm has torn holes in reality that will take centuries to heal. New types of entities may emerge from these wounds. Elder Mirasthen, one of the few survivors of the Nethys leadership, spoke carefully. What does humanity require to address these new threats? Complete autonomy in all matters related to extra-dimensional security, Nari replied. No restrictions on human operations in deep space, no questions about human methods or technologies, and in return, humanity will continue to serve as the galaxy's guardians. We will hunt the things that should not exist so that your civilizations can continue to exist safely. Admiral Korvash, his uniform now bearing symbols of human protection, asked the question that all the aliens wanted answered. What is humanity's ultimate goal? What do you want from us? Nari considered the question carefully. We want you to understand what you are. You are the civilians in a war that never ended. You are the children we protect from monsters under the bed. You are the peaceful societies that exist because someone else is willing to be violent on your behalf. And you want nothing more? We want you to acknowledge that truth. We want you to stop pretending that the galaxy is safe because it is naturally peaceful. We want you to understand that safety is something that must be fought for, maintained, and protected by those willing to become monsters themselves. General Minsu stepped forward, wearing the new uniform of the Human Guardian Corps. Humanity will establish permanent bases in deep space. We will patrol the dark places between stars. We will maintain the barriers that keep nightmare entities from reaching inhabited worlds. And if we refuse these terms? Asked a Keth representative. Then you will face the next crisis alone, Nari replied simply. And there will be a next crisis. There is always a next crisis. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would become the galaxy's official guardians, with powers and responsibilities that transcended normal governmental authority. They would be feared, and respected in equal measure, which was exactly how they preferred it. Months later, Captain Wanho stood on the bridge of the Guardian ship Deep Hunter, patrolling the edges of known space. His crew monitored sensor readings that showed things moving in the cosmic deep, entities that existed in the spaces between reality. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, reported his sensor operator. "Classification unknown. Recommended response?